Again, I'm Tech Sergeant Reed for everybody that's on. And if you've been on the last couple of days, you pretty much know the premise of, what we're doing here. Tech Sergeant Mitchell and I have partnered with the Tier to Tier organization, which, is an organization that was started by Master Sergeant Prouty and Master Sergeant Select Jones, basically to help out fellow recruiters, tier to tier, either tier 2 to tier 2, or, in this case, where we have the opportunity to kind of reach out to, tier 1 recruiters to inform you, again, if you've been on the last couple of days, some of the different jobs and some of the different tier 2 jobs that AFRS has to offer. For those of you that are coming up on your MOI, and are trying to decide what it is that you want to list as a potential tier 2, or, even as a tier 2 recruiter that's going to a consecutive tour, maybe not yet moving on to tier 3, but going on to consecutive tier 2, this information is good for you as well. So today we have training and marketing NCOs, Tech Sergeant Nova and Sergeant Krask. And so what they are going to do is just tell you a little bit about what their day-to-day is like, in the training marketing, some of their experiences, and, hopefully some information that, maybe they didn't know as tier 1 recruiters, and, learned a little bit more about the job, once they got in that position. So, Sergeant Nova, take it away. And, we'll be getting you questions as we get them in the comment box.
Thank you, sir. What's going on, everybody? I'm Technical Sergeant Novanario. Go by Nova. It's a little easier that way. I've been in recruiting for a little over 6 years now. Prior to that, I was in the avionics field, worked on targeting systems, worked mock, and then came into recruiting. So I was probably one of the last of the volunteering flights to go in before DSD started kicking off. Recruited out of Arizona. It was a good time, real good time. But I actually was very interested in going into training and marketing coming out of that, because I was the kind of the interim trainer, flight trainer for my flight. And I really loved training individuals and kind of getting them to where they needed to be. And so I thoroughly enjoyed that. And so I became a trainer and marketer over at Hill Air Force Base, the 368th Recruiting Squadron over there. And it was a blast. And so a little bit about the day-to-day stuff that I did. I mean, when you look at training and marketing, it's for the training aspect of it, it's kind of what it sounds like. You're going out and you're training new recruiters. You're trying to get them ready for to become certified recruiters. You're trying to go ahead and get them to where they need to be so that they're successful. And you're not necessarily doing that all the time. And so when you think of a trainer, you're not going and talking to a recruiter and sitting in their office all the time. There's that in-between aspect of it to where there's a lot of innovation. So you're kind of thinking, all right, what is it that I need to go ahead and do to get these individuals where they need to be? What can I do to help them to alleviate all the stress? Because I'm sure a lot of you guys, that first year in recruiting absolutely sucked. I know it did for me. The first 6 months of recruiting, I was hating life. And so being a trainer, kind of thinking that way and saying, you know what can I do to make that first 6 months better for these recruiters? That's what you get to do as a trainer. You get to be innovative and think of different ways to perfect their trade and make their life easier. And that was probably one of the most gratifying pieces to that for the training aspect, at least. And so there is a lot of computer time where you're just sitting there and you're updating different forms. There's times when you're actually going ahead and sitting as a team, if you do have a team with you, and kind of just bouncing off ideas and saying, hey, how how would this work, or would this policy be a better fit? And there's a lot of times where you're also listening to the recruiters, not necessarily just new recruiters either. You're listening to all the recruiters in your squadron. You're saying, okay, what is it that what are your issues? What are your problems? And do you guys have any potential solutions that we might be able to go ahead and elevate to you guys as well? You're kind of like their advocates. You're their middleman type deal. And so, Sergeant Kraft, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that training aspect as far as what you've experienced in that piece?
No, yeah. I mean, what she said was right on point. I mean, the way I looked at it is if I can get those recruiters out of their office, 10 minutes earlier, in the evening, I felt like I was doing my job because ultimately, we know that everybody as a tier one recruiter is overwhelmed. You guys have so much on your plate. So we try to take as much as we can off your guys' plate and put it on ours. We do that through training, just making sure that you guys, if you need any help, if you're struggling at all, there's a lot of times that tier one recruiters are afraid to reach out and say, hey, I need help. I need to know how to do this. So it's our job to kind of go out there and, just, make conversation, let's call the recruiters and see how they're doing, and see if there's having issues with anything, and then try to, once again, just, get them out of the office a little bit earlier each day. So yeah, you're right on point.
And so, but kind of taken away from that, selfishly, I mean, that was something very, very gratifying to me is to help them. But then also for training and marketing as a whole, I mean, for my squadron, we covered about 6 different states. And so I was TDY quite a bit. I mean, I probably was TDY at least a week, once a month, a week at a time. And that's one of the reasons why I joined the Air Force, was to be able to travel. I haven't really gotten to do a lot of that overseas, but I've traveled all across the United States, and a big chunk of that was in training and marketing. And I got to go, I traveled all throughout Nevada, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Utah, and Washington State. And so it was a lot of fun. I'm a foodie. I love to try different types of foods all the time. And that just being able to experience different foods, go see different landscapes and all that type of stuff. I love hiking. And so I took full advantage of that to explore different areas that I've never been to. And so that was something that I thoroughly enjoyed about the training and marketing piece. And I do apologize, guys. I am kind of saying that in the past tense. Right now, I am with the 330th. I am a special warfare recruiter, and I did 3 years of the training marketing piece. And so I'm a brand new special warfare recruiter. And so a lot of that is still extremely fresh. And so, but that was probably some of the best experiences, was that traveling piece to go ahead and see different things. What about you, Sergeant Krask?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I felt like I had the biggest impact when I was actually in the field. Just out there with the recruiters, kind of going office to office and seeing what they're actually going through on a day-to-day basis. Because I mean, as we all know, each AOR is different. I mean, even if you guys are only maybe an hour apart, still, I mean, your demographics, everything can be totally different. So, I mean, that's one thing I definitely look forward to, is going TDY. Just knowing that I could help each individual versus, trying to do it from headquarters. So I feel like your hands are a little more tied when you're at headquarters. Yeah, absolutely.
And that too, kind of putting that, showcasing that, hey, this is something I love to do, but also showing the benefit of getting out of the office and going to different restaurants, going to different places, and just and getting the recruiter out of the office as a whole, and just taking them around their AOR, just so to open their eyes and see what else is out there. I thought was an awesome benefit to them too. And so that training piece, it's not necessarily, and for me personally, I did not like to sit in their office and it was a one-way street. I did not like to go ahead and just talk to them and just say, hey, this is how you're supposed to do things, or this and that. No, it was that teaching opportunity, and to allow them to show you what is that they do and kind of incorporate some of the things that you have learned as well. It's an awesome feeling. And then to get them out of their office and do different things too. That's the big piece of it, is more of that hands-on stuff, more of the what's the words I'm looking for? I got a blank right now, but it shouldn't be just sitting there and going over impact and just going over like a checklist. It shouldn't be like that, in my opinion. I think it needs to be get it as much out from behind the desk as possible, as much talking to people as possible, showcasing those skills, getting into the schools, doing that type of thing. That was the best parts of training.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, it was crazy. I mean, I always walked away from every TDY learning something about recruiting that I had never even thought of before. I mean, just as simple as like changing processes, the different way to ask questions and all that. And it was really, it was interesting to see, because like when you think, like when you do tier 1 recruiting, you've been doing it for 3 or 4 years, you kind of think like, okay, I know all the answers to all this stuff. But it was kind of humbling going back there and, talking to tier 1 recruiters, even that are brand new, and just seeing how they're being innovative. And I'm like, wow, that was actually a really good idea. Why wasn't I doing that when I was on the bag? So, I mean, it goes both ways. I mean, they're learning stuff from us and we're also learning stuff from them. And then we're taking the information back to headquarters, sharing it with our commander, pro soup and all that, and then hopefully briefing it, as a best practice in the future. So.
Oh, definitely. And I think that right there, when we look at the training aspect, and I know we haven't really covered marketing quite yet, but when you look at the training aspect and for me being in Arizona, I've kind of dealt with different zones. And so I've somewhat worked the walk-in market. I've also had to go out in the streets and recruit. But when you actually go and be a trainer and look at it as a different perspective and see how, hey, this is no kidding, a full-on, these recruiters have to be out in the street to recruit. There's no walk-in at all. And that's Montana. And then you look at Nevada, for example, and they have so much flow going into their offices, but they have to learn how to manage that flow. And so you're sitting there and you've never actually experienced to that capacity. You might have had some experience in it, but not to that capacity. You're taking all of that in as well. And that knowledge that you get is just going to make you that much better of a flight chief. And just like you said, Sergeant Krask, all that new stuff, all that innovation that those tier 1 recruiters are doing, you're putting that in your toolbox and you're saying, you know what, when it's time for me to be able to lead a flight, I now have these different experiences that I can utilize, and I'm better prepared for any location that I go to.
Yeah, I was going to say, training also gives you a great opportunity to mentorship your fellow recruiters, just like what you were saying, Sergeant Nova. So we covered Wyoming, and there's some AORs out there that the recruiters are just really struggling. I mean, there's no walk-in market at all. They're really having to go out there, pound the pavement. And my first experience of actually being a trainer was going to see that recruiter that was struggling. We were doing supplemental training with him, and he was just down in the dumps. He didn't want to be in the Air Force anymore. He was ready to just basically punch and say, I'm done with recruiting, done with the Air Force. And we spent some time with him. We spent those 4 days with him, just going out in his AOR, seeing what he's dealing with, just kind of letting him just open up and understand where he's coming from. And sure enough, he ended up being one of our strongest recruiters by the end of the year. He just changed his mindset. He kind of listened to what we were saying as far as, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You're not always going to be, ATB recruiter. You're going to have struggles and stuff like that. But come to find out, like I said, once again, he was one of our strongest recruiters in an AOR that should not be, doing that well. So definitely.
Yeah. The other awesome piece to the training part is the training that you receive as well. And so I've been down to Randolph. I've been down to Lackland, getting different training, impact certified and stuff like that. And to have a better understanding of impact to that level, and then also understanding different behaviors and stuff like that, it allows, that kind of comes twofold. It not only allows you as a trainer to better teach recruiters on how to interact with their applicants, but it also teaches you, like you said, Sergeant Krask, that mentorship piece. It allows you to have a better understanding of the recruiters and how their behaviors work, how their motivators work, and all that type of stuff. And again, that translates over, and that best practice as you continue to work on those mentoring allows you to be a better flight chief when that time comes. And so all of it kind of acts as a domino effect. And I think that the training and marketing, when we get to that, just helps lead you to success when you get to that next piece of where you're wanting to go.
Yeah, it's a great point too, what you're saying about as far as helping you out to become a flight chief, because I mean, as a tier 1 recruiter, you're only thinking about your own goal. You're not really thinking about, your flight chief and how he has to worry about 6, 7 other recruiters making goal. But once you get to headquarters, you realize how much pressure is on the pro soup to make the whole squadron, make goal. So a lot of pressure is put on the trainers too to understand and figure out, why is a recruiter struggling? Why are they not making goal? So it's interesting for me just to get different perspective, because like I said, I was always thinking about Sergeant Crass. How can I do better? How can I be ATB, silver badge, that kind of thing? And now looking back, it's like, wow, there's a lot more involved than just myself, so you get a headquarters perspective. It's kind of eye-opening for sure, at least for that first couple of months. You're like, wow, these recruiters are definitely hustling for sure.
Does anybody at this point have any questions about training before we kind of move on to the marketing piece?
Well, I have a quick question for training. So once you are selected for training, are you expected to know everything about recruiting, or is there some type of learning curve so you can know how to train people, how to be, more, a better recruiter?
So we're learning every day, man. Every single day I'm learning something new, just being back in the bag as a 330th recruiter. I don't necessarily want to say that you have that expectation to know everything about recruiting. And I do know individuals that have gone into training and marketing, and their replacement, or I'm sorry, the person that they're replacing PCSs right away, and so they don't necessarily get that opportunity to shadow them. And so there is a little more of that, hey, you gotta try and figure it out a little quicker. But you have your senior trainer and you have your headquarters individuals that are there to help mentor and guide you throughout the whole process. And you get, like I said, with the training that I went through, you have those opportunities to go through those trainings. And then just like how you're taught as a recruiter in tier 1, picking up the phone, calling another trainer and marketer and saying, hey man, or ma'am, or whoever it is, hey, what exactly did you do in this particular scenario? And so there's so many different avenues for you to learn. But for me personally, when I got to 6'8", I shadowed the current trainer and marketer that was there, and just kind of picked up from them and molded how I was going to be a trainer and marketer throughout the rest of it. Did that answer your question?
They do have train the trainer workshop too.
Yes.
So I mean, typically you'd go to that within the first couple of months of being assigned to being in training and marketing. That was definitely helpful, because really you don't understand your role. I mean, it's just like anything within recruiting. They say, hey, you're going to be a tier 1 recruiter. You're going to be OA kind of recruiting, that kind of stuff. You're like, well, what does that actually entail? So you go through this course, you get to kind of cross feed with other recruiters who are going to be doing the same position as you, and just hearing from like AFRS as far as like what your roles and responsibilities are as a trainer. So
is there a certification process as a trainer, or no?
So Sergeant Crass, you're probably going to be able to better answer this, because I know that they were talking about doing some change. And when I first came into training and marketing, there was, and then for the tier 2 aspect of it, they kind of took away, hey, you don't have to go through the certification, but we're still going to make sure that you know what you're doing. And so I've never been certified per se as a trainer and marketer. Sergeant Crass, has any of that changed?
no, yeah, you're 100% correct. So yeah, when I came in, so just a little bit about myself to give a little intro here. So I've been in recruiting for 11 years now. I started off doing EA out of Chicago in a smaller town called Joliet. So I did that for 4 years. Then I went out to LA. I did health professions recruiting out there, which honestly was probably one of my favorite assignments. And then I went to training marketing, where I'm currently assigned right now. So I've been out here in Colorado Springs for about 3 years. So just quick intro. But yeah, so For me, I did go through TAS certification, so it's almost kind of like a tier 1 recruiter where you'd have that first year where you're technically considered in training, and then once you hit your year mark, you sit down with your supervisor and just go through all the tasks, and you get TAS certified. So same thing, but that did go away really for tier 2. Now you don't have to get TAS certified anymore. It's really more on your supervisor just saying, yeah, you are good to go, move forward, kind of thing. So it has changed.
Anybody else have any other questions about training?
Is there anybody that's thinking about doing training that, any specific questions?
I'm interested in doing training, so that's why I gotta I kind of have some of these questions. But I mean, y'all did a great job of covering everything. I think the only other question, and sorry, Nova, I think you touched on a little bit, but the times where you're not TDY, because everybody sees what the trainer does, obviously, when you're out there. And that's really great perspective, from what y'all are saying because like I always felt better, after my trainer came out, when I was on EA, and I think that, should always be the goal is coming out and, giving the EA recruiter, more, better tools, different perspective, things like that. And even now, as an HP recruiter, we kind of look for the same thing in our shadow trainers and squadron. But as far as what what you do when you're not on the road, what is that like? Because typically you're your TDY 1 week out of the month, but when you're just up there at the squadron, like how much do you deal with AFRIS? How much research do you have to do prior to going to the zone? Things like that, because as somebody who might be interested in going into training, these are things that we see what the training NCO does when they're sitting across from us, but we don't know necessarily how much background, I guess how much research goes into prepping for that TDY.
There's quite a bit of research that is put into place. And a part of that is a good transition into the marketing aspect of it, as far as, hey, what do we do on a day-to-day? Because training and marketing, they're almost one thing. In a lot of squadrons, there are some marketers that's all they do is marketing, and there's some trainers that's all they do in training. But a lot of the training and marketing places that I've seen, they're interchangeable. That trainer can go ahead and do marketing, and that marketer can go ahead and do training if need be. And so, but in regards to getting ready for a TDY on my part, it was a lot of research. That research does kind of go down a little bit as you go through throughout the years. And what I mean by that is this: you do a lot of the research on the individual, and you dig into their AFRIS, and you see, all right, what exactly is it that they're doing now? How many leads do they have? How many not contacted do they have? PIRs? You're kind of looking at all of that. And sometimes, because you're having to juggle that time, because there's so much stuff going on within each quarter. And so there's sometimes that you're actually going to go see that new recruiter within 30 days instead of within the 60. And then there's other times when you're right at the cusp of breaking that 60-day mark. And so looking at each individual's AFRIS is going to differ, because one person might be so new that they don't have anything, whereas the other person, they've actually have some sort of a flow. And so the research is crucial, just to be able to understand what exactly that recruiter is doing. But sometimes there's nothing to really see until you actually get out there and you start talking to the individual. And there are a lot of times where you have to kind of go off on the fly and just be like, hey, evaluating the person as a whole to better understand how you're going to train them. And the research that you do, you have to be fluid in that aspect as well, because sitting across from somebody, you can have all the research possible, looking through all the AFRIS, understanding the complete area and everything. And you look at the research and you start talking to the person, you say, the research is out the window, because it's not necessarily the things that's going on here. It's how this person is And now I need to go ahead and take this person's, I don't want to use attitude. Vocabulary wise, that's not the right word, but let's go ahead and use attitude. The overall person concept of who this person is. I need to go ahead and take this and mold my training based off of the individual instead of the research that I brought to the table. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, that definitely makes sense. And I guess that kind of leads in, and, again, you kind of covered this a little bit, but we did have a question. What is, either you or Sergeant Crass, but has there been any remarkable challenge, like one where you've been called out and obviously, you don't have to name any, anybody specifically, but, I guess what would be what you would consider the biggest challenge in training, and then we can kind of go ahead and segue into the marketing piece.
Crass, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I know for me, my biggest challenge is basically trying to get everybody to be a successful recruiter. Sometimes it's not possible. I mean, we've had recruiters that just blatantly don't listen to the direction you're giving them, the guidance. They're not following their flight chief's guidance, and they're kind of just doing their own thing, and they're kind of just thrashing about. And for me, it was hard to go on a TDY knowing that I'm trying to make them successful and leave and really know that they weren't even paying attention to half the stuff I was saying. So one thing I started to do is have them take notes. So every time I would go out there, I'd say, hey, make sure you're taking notes because you need some takeaways. And then I would recap before I was leaving, saying, what have you learned from me being, with you for these past couple of days? And like I said, once again, just for me, it was knowing that we've actually had a couple recruiters, basically get pushed out of recruiting. And it was not saying just because of my training, but it was just some of them just don't want to learn. They don't want to be in recruiting. They don't want to be successful. And they just don't have what it takes. So for me, it was hard knowing that, some of those people left under my watch. But Sergeant Nova, I don't know about you, if you had any challenges.
I did. Transparency, I think, is a very, very big thing. When you're going to a new recruiter's office, and I'm sure a lot of you guys on this Zoom call right now can attest to that. We're from headquarters, and we're going to your office, and the first thing that you think of, this is someone from leadership, this is someone from headquarters, and you have to be able to break that mold and to be able to start that trust, to start that rapport. And so that piece right there, and letting them know that, hey, I'm here to train you, I'm here to help you out, and I'm going to give you constructive criticism. And it's very important that you hear the good, the bad, the ugly, so that we can go ahead and better you in any aspect possible so that you can be successful. And understanding different people's behaviors, that piece right there was difficult at some points. I have my own behaviors. I have my own way of doing things, and trying to change how I do things to better benefit somebody else was kind of a difficult portion for me. For some individuals, we didn't click. For some things, and I know I don't necessarily want to make that sound like, oh yeah, no, we weren't buddy, not like that, but just how our attitudes were with this one individual. It was very, very difficult to overcome that particular aspect, and the training there was no training. And so kind of like what you're saying, Sergeant Crass, they wanted to go ahead and do their own thing. And so how do you overcome that so that they don't fail? Because I'm sorry, sir, you feel the same way, Sergeant Crass, but I mean, I put that weight on my shoulders. If they're failing, then I feel like I failed. And so those were some of the things that was difficult to overcome from my perspective.
Yeah, it was a great point too, so I know what you said. Because there's a perception. I mean, everybody knows that we fall under the pro soup, so they think like it's strictly going to be bashing them about like production and basically listening to everything they have to say, watching appointments, and running back to the pro soup, be like, oh man, this is the worst recruiter I've ever seen, kind of thing. So it's definitely hard to break that perception. But you have to build trust, just like you build the applicant, just let them know that we're here to help you. We're not here to hurt you. Some stuff, it might hurt your feelings, just don't take it personal. We're just giving you another perspective. And it's definitely, there's a perception out there for sure.
Yeah, that's so that, I mean, that's awesome perspective. You know, and hopefully, like I said, for everybody that's on, you're kind of taking these perspectives, you know, into consideration when, again, you know, when you're looking at your MOIs, you know, for those of you that have MOIs coming up, you know, and really looking at what the training piece has to offer you as far as, like, you know, tools for your toolbox. If you plan on progressing through tier 2 and then, you know, eventually into tier 3 as a flight chief, just like Sergeant Nova said, you know, this can set you up for tremendous success as a flight chief because of your ability to be able to connect, you know, with the recruiters that are, you know, that you're leading, because of the experience that you're going to have with dealing with so many different, you know, different recruiting styles and, you know, and everything else. So, awesome perspective, you know, from the training piece. So if we can now kind of transition over into marketing, you know, I'll toss it up, whoever wants to lead off with that, you know, but if we can kind of get into the marketing piece, that'd be awesome.
Oh,
I can start off on this one.
Go ahead.
All right. So yeah, marketing for me was definitely more challenging than training. For me, the training aspect just came more natural, I guess you could say. For marketing, I had no prior training in marketing whatsoever. I didn't know what the position did. I basically filled a vacancy without being able to see what the actual marketer did before me. So basically going there blind was definitely difficult. It took quite a few phone calls to other marketers, just even mirroring what they do, you know, on the civilian side as a marketer, because you got to think, like, as a tier 1 recruiter, we're jack of all trades, right? We do everything from marketing. We go out there making the phone calls, telephone prospecting, doing all that stuff. Same thing for marketing too. Really, normally in a civilian spot, like a marketer would be a separate position, but for me, I was doing training and marketing at the same time. But really, the main thing with marketing is kind of just thinking outside the box and how you can help your recruiters make goal. So one of the things that we did is we started doing digital. I'm not going to say that we were the first squadron to do it by any means, but we started incorporating digital marketing into our marketing campaign for each year. And I think overall it's been very successful because you can actually track data. Whereas, you know, the old school way of thinking, like when I was on the bag, it was like, hey, how can we put up banners in the high schools, or, you know, put up a banner in the stadium, all those kind of things. But the issue was you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars, but you have no way of seeing what your return on investment is. I mean, granted, you can ask the applicant when they come in, hey, how did you find out about the Air Force? But almost never you can hear, oh, I saw a banner in the stadium and made me want to join the Air Force. Whereas digital marketing, let's say like social media, you can actually track all those analytics. So we can spend maybe $1,000 to do a post, you know, have it run for a couple of days, and then actually see all those analytics come in. And it says, you know, this person clicked on this, they watched the whole video, and then they went to airforce.com afterwards. So the main thing, like I said, once again, for marketing, I would say is just thinking outside the box, listening to your recruiters. One thing I always do is I reach out to recruiters every couple of months, like we're doing training and marketing, whether it's a quarterly training, semi-annual, and just say, hey, what are you guys doing in the field that's different than, you know, every other recruiter? How are you being successful when it comes to marketing yourselves? And once again, just learning and taking that back to headquarters, and then hopefully, you know, passing on the information to all other recruiters too, how to be successful. We've seen a drastic changes in the number of leads that have come in just through doing digital marketing. A lot of our leads before were, you know, generated from zone canvassing, all that kind of stuff. But now we've, I want to say we've almost doubled the leads that we've gotten in just through using social media. So, Sergeant Nova, I don't know if you can speak to that at all.
Oh, I mean, just speaking about marketing as a whole, I thoroughly enjoyed marketing. It was a blast. Thinking outside the box is a huge piece. And then also just being innovative as a whole, just to go ahead and try and think of, because there's some squadrons that you're going to go to, and I'll kind of get into the weeds of it, but there's some squadrons that you'll go to that you go ahead and throw out there. You say, hey, what marketing requests do you guys want? What is it that you're asking the recruiters, kind of like what you said, Sergeant Crass, hey, start listening to them. What is it that you guys need? What is it that you guys want? And you're not getting anything back. There's crickets. Nobody says a darn thing. And so what do? You have a $75,000 budget a year. And what exactly are you going to do to go ahead and help those flights? And that's where those innovative juices start flowing. And it's a blast. And so first things first, learning about marketing as a whole. You're going to go to marketing conferences, which is a lot of fun. You actually interact with different marketers, just like that train the trainer. You go through kind of the same deal, and you're bouncing ideas off with other marketers. You're understanding what GSD&M, they're the main marketers for the Air Force, understanding what new products that they're coming out. You're listening to AFRS marketing and seeing what they're doing, and you're able to bring that back to the field and say, hey, this is what the Air Force is trying to go ahead and do for us. And you understand money. Not necessarily all the accounts and stuff like that, but you understand how it all works on the marketing side. You understand how to budget it all. And so that's another thing that you get to put in your toolbox. You say, hey, you're budgeting throughout the year, and you might not get the full on budget right off the bat. And so you're having to go ahead and split. If you have 6 flights, $12,000 a month, 6 flights. How exactly am I going to piece this together to go ahead and make this successful for each of them? I've going down the line, I've done multiple NASCAR events. I've done snowcross events. I've done sporting events. We went ahead and did this amazing event at Hill Air Force Base, where we actually got the junior ROTCs to go ahead and participate in a competition at the Alpha Warrior Battle Rig. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but if you're close to a base, you go to the gym and you see this whole little monkey bar set. That's a DOD event where people compete, and they go to San Antonio to actually do that. And so we actually had 40 students compete on that, and that's just all from that marketing piece. We had prizes to go ahead and go along with that. It was just a blast. And so and that's looking at one of the aspects of where we're like, all right, what are some of the hardships with that? And Sergeant Krask, you kind of hit on some of it. The digital marketing as a whole is a beautiful thing. That's the future. That's what we should be focusing on. And as marketers, that's a lot of what the push is. But then you look at other traditional means as far as like television advertisements or banner ads or whatever it is, billboards. And you still have to kind of be able to fight for those particular things to your production superintendent, because their main focus is production. I need numbers. I need to get people in the Air Force. How many people are in the Air Force right now? And as a marketer, you're trying to figure out lead generation, but you're also trying to figure out awareness and interest within your zones. And so what exactly can you do to spark interest in areas that might not have been paid attention to? And so telling your pro soup, hey, listen, what we're spending $10,000 on right now, it might not necessarily turn into leads instantaneous, but it's going to get the Air Force out there to 10,000, 50,000 individuals that haven't ever seen Air Force or really don't know anything about it. And so you get to go ahead and fight for those things. You get to learn more about the marketing as a whole. 6-8, they went ahead and paid for my digital marketing certificate from the Digital Marketing Institute. And so there's certifications that you have an opportunity to get. There's just so much that you get to do with it. And just seeing the impact as a whole, just seeing the products that you can actually develop yourself along with your team, it's awesome. I absolutely love the marketing piece.
Yeah, I was just saying, man, you rang a bell when you talked about the budget. So yeah, that's what I said when I kind of struggled at the beginning. I started 1 October, and it was like, hey, we know we're gonna have a $75,000 budget. Spend it how you see fit. So the first thing I did was reach out to flight chiefs and recruiters. I'm like, hey, what prior events have you guys been working? Like all that kind of stuff. And it was crickets, and I had no idea where to go from there. So then I called each flight chief one-on-one. I'm like, are you guys doing any kind of events? And like, oh yeah, but they don't, there's no return on investment. So starting over, just like you're saying, you have to kind of instill the mindset in the flight chiefs and the pro soup that not everything is going to be instantaneous lead. You may work an event and you might not get a lead the next day in AFRIS and be like, oh man, this, made me goal. A lot of it's zone awareness and just making the Air Force name a household name. So for me, that was my biggest challenge to overcome is just kind of explain to the flight chiefs and recruiters, like, you're not always going to see an instant return, but know that somebody's going to see this commercial, or they're going to see a banner, or they're going to go to this event, and they're going to have it in the back of their mind, and eventually they're going to pull the trigger and be like, hey, you know what? There's a great opportunity out there. I remember, seeing this commercial, all these different opportunities the Air Force has to offer, and eventually they are going to join. It just, it's not always going to be instantaneous gratification, I guess you could say. So.
Yep. No, 100%. And I want to put the example and just that outside of the box thinking, guys. A lot of times when we think of events, we're thinking, oh, we got the air show or a NASCAR event or a baseball game. No, that doesn't necessarily have to be an event. The event that we put together over at Hill Air Force Base, it involved directly with these recruiters, AOR, their high schools. And some of these high schools, they weren't ever able to go ahead and get into. And so we were able to go have these junior ROTCs come in and compete, and they wanted to come back next year. They were more, they wanted the recruiters to come in and talk to their students and stuff like that, just because of the awesome thing that we kind of put in place for them. And so just thinking outside of the box, it doesn't have to be this cookie cutter. Let's go ahead and do a booth over here. No, you can do so much more with the marketing piece. It's imagination. Have the imagination. Think outside the box, and you have the liberties to do that. You get to go ahead and do the research, call people, and get quotes and stuff like that. And if you're passionate about it, talk to your senior trainer about it, talk to the pro soup about it, and say, hey, I think this is going to be an excellent event. And if you get buy-in, everything that you just put together is going to be moving forward.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys can think of marketing as far as like your annual plan. We have the same thing in marketing where we come up with an annual plan as far as like how we're going to spend the money. So same thing as a tier 1 recruiter, you don't want to just go into an office where there's been a fellow recruiter there and be like, hey man, where's your annual plan? You take that and all of a sudden just run with it and think you're going to be successful. Same thing in marketing. You look at prior years' annual plans from other marketers, and then you tweak that stuff and change it to how you see fit and how you're going to make the squadron successful. So, but a lot of similarities though. I mean, that's also going to help you once you become a flight chief too as well.
Yeah. And I'm actually glad, Sergeant Crass, that you said annual, because that actually ping when you're so kind of, Sergeant Reed, to answer some more of your question about, hey, what is it that you're doing in the in-between when you're not going TDY, when you're not going to these events, when you're not training a recruiter, you're an event planner. That's another big aspect of what it is that we do. We're event coordinators, we're event planners, party planner, whatever the heck you want to call it. We're planning for quarterly training. We're planning for the semi-annual. You're planning for the annual, and you're putting all of that stuff together, and along with, and there's a lot of research that comes into play, especially because, like I said, you can dual hat. Being a trainer, you're probably going to do marketing and vice versa. And so not only are you going to be doing that research when it comes to AFRIS and the individual, but you're doing a lot of research for those events. And so when you're sitting at the desk, it's not, hey, I'm just sitting twiddling my thumbs. You're planning for something else. You're always planning for the next day, the next week, the next month, to go ahead and get these recruiters to be successful and to make sure that the squadron's successful in every aspect.
Yes, and you'll definitely get a new respect for an annual when you attend one after you plan one. Because I always went to annuals and criticized every single thing, like, oh man, the food's horrible, this is that. And then when you spend like literally like 8 months of planning plus doing your normal jobs, I give it a total different amount of respect now, because I mean, there's just so many moving parts that go into it, so.
Exactly. Yep. That's always fun.
Good perspective for everybody on the call. Appreciate marketing and planning and, and the people that put together your annuals.
I do have a quick question before we go. So being a marketer, are you in charge of purchasing SPIs? Because I always wonder, why are we getting Frisbees? That's not helping me get anyone into the Air Force.
So that's when it comes to SPIs, and we look at it, we have AFRS, we have group, and we have squadrons and down to the flight, right? A lot of times what happens is those SPIs, we have a certain system for the SPIs, okay? And group will come down and say, hey, we just loaded a bunch of SPIs. into what we call the NIB. I don't know what it stands for. I did at one point. I hate acronyms. They suck. But in the NIB, you get the all these SPIs. And so what we do at that point in time is where we distribute them. We go ahead and we divvy it out to each of the flights to go ahead and get. Now, as marketers and trainers, you do have the opportunity to get different SPIs on the NIB, but that, again, that costs money. And when it comes time to it, when we're asking for those types of buy-ins, when we reach out to the flight chiefs and stuff like that, that's one of the things that you're going to have to try and overcome is, hey, do you guys want these types of SPIs? Or do you guys want us to go ahead and go through a different company and develop different SPIs? So there's different things that you get to do. I've purchased Air Force made SPIs, and then I've also gone through different companies and made hoodies, different baseball caps and stuff like that. But most of those SPIs that you get from the squadron are dropped down from the group, and all they're doing is pressing a couple buttons to go ahead and distribute. Does that make sense?
Yes,
And so,
but you will take flack as a marketer, because every time those are distributed and they arrive at the recruiter's offices, you get those phone calls. Hey man, why are we getting fidget spinners? Or why do we get all large or extra large like depth shirts? Like, we don't have anybody that's extra large in depth. And it's like, man, that's all we're doing is forwarding them down from, group and AFRS. So
yep. I do want to add one more thing, and it's a hardship. It's patience is probably one of the hardest pieces when you look down, and I think looking at SPIs is a good segue to that. When we were talking, when me and Sergeant Crass were saying, hey, the budget, $75,000, and you look at everything else across the board, you don't get that $75,000 right off the bat. You definitely don't get that $75,000 off the bat. You have the government shutdown. You have them trying to figure out the budget. And so you might have a point in time when, hey, you only get $10,000 for the whole entire squadron. Think about that. $10,000 to go ahead and support a squadron for marketing funds. Or you might not get anything for a couple months. I remember the beginning of this fiscal year, before I went on over to the 330th, we were rolling donuts as far as the funds were concerned. And that piece right there is probably one of the biggest things to overcome with looking down at, and I don't mean that as, oh, look, these recruiters down here, no, but going at the lowest level and them trying to complain. I'm trying to use my words better. Them looking up and saying, hey, where the heck is our money? Why aren't we getting the things that we need? And you're like, I don't have money for this, guys. I can't actually spend money yet because we don't have the money to do it. And so that was probably one of the biggest hardships, is not having the funding and trying to tell the recruiters and the flight chiefs that, and then bouncing back and forth and being like, dude, we need this. And you're like, my hands are tied. And then it kind of looks bad on you, because now it looks like you're not doing anything for the squadron. Headquarters knows what you're doing. Headquarters knows everything that's going on. But then you look down at the lower level of recruiters, and then they're like, you're not doing anything for me, man. Why do we even have marketing if you're not doing something? So that part right there was a hardship for me, trying to get that aspect going. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Sergeant Crass?
definitely, yeah. I mean, I try to be as transparent as possible, but still, I mean, you know how it is. Like when you're expecting something from headquarters because you're the marketer. But yeah, we know that typically, once the fiscal year begins, we don't have money for at least a couple of months. Sometimes it goes into almost like January timeframe. But we know that there's so many events that happen in the fall. So the thing that's unfortunate is you can't take like funds, let's say from, FY20 and bring them into FY21. So you always have kind of like that downtime. And unfortunately, it happens in the fall when there's so many events going on. So like I said, I was always transparent, just let them know, like, we know we're not gonna have money during this time. So hit it extra hard, in this summer, early fall. So this way, hopefully carries you, during that time we don't have money. But once again, you got to think, as an EA recruiter, you're hearing it, but you're once again just worried about goals. So you're not understanding, like what's happening at our level too. So just know that we are, we're there to help all the recruiters. But yeah, there's times where our hands are tied. There's different rules too when you have the marketing card, as far as like how much money you can spend per transaction, how much you can spend per month. So there's a lot of different rules that go into account that not everybody knows. So definitely transparency.
That's awesome. So the last thing, because I don't want to run too far over, we're almost at 11. But the last thing that I wanted to get y'all's perspective on is one, and I think, again, for anybody that is thinking about listening to this, again, because TDY, we see y'all, we pretty much know what your hours are. When we're in the office, you're pretty much in the office, or you can kind of set that agenda. There's a little bit of freedom when it comes to that, and that's more on the training market, the training piece. But as far as like how long you're typically in the office, or what, what your typical office hours are when you're not on the road. And then, just real quick, how easy is it for you, because there's so much diversity in your jobs as far as like training and marketing goes, how easy is it for y'all to come up with bullets for your EPR? Because I know that's something that everybody's concerned about is getting a strong EPR.
As far as the bullets are concerned, super easy. I mean, think all that innovation that you're doing, all the leading aspect, you're putting together annuals. You have so many moving parts that you have so many bullets to choose from. You can fill up an EPR very, very easily. When it comes to hours, I will say that depends on your leadership. At the office, if your commander says that, hey, in headquarters, we're in the office from 8 to 3 or 9 to 5 or whatever it is, well, then that's kind of what you're doing. But there's also times when the headquarters could be extremely lax, and you can come in at 10 o'clock and leave at 3 o'clock. And so it really kind of depends. And it's more so of that trust aspect of, are you going to get your job done, and how proficient are you at that? When you're TDY, I was in the office, so it didn't matter. As long as the recruiter was in the office, was as long as I was in the office. So if we came in at 7 o'clock to 7 o'clock at night, that's what we were doing.
Yeah, I was gonna say one thing that helped too. I mean, not saying COVID's good, but I mean, it made everybody realize the headquarters, especially like leadership, that you don't have to be at the office, from 7 to 4 to be successful in training and marketing. We can do this stuff remote too. So I mean, sometimes marketing is going to be where you're negotiating. You're going up to, like for us, we went up to like a stadium in Denver to negotiate how we're going to like do future events and stuff like that. So they just have to understand that we're going to be out of the office sometimes. We're not always going to be sitting at our desk staring at our computers. But yeah, for us, I mean, it was pretty standard. Normally it was going to be 9 to 5, those kind of hours. But yeah, there's sometimes that headquarters is like, hey, you know what, early release on Friday, go home, spend time with your family, kind of stuff too. So it almost kind of reminds me of like EA, same kind of mentality too. As long as you're responsible, you're doing your work. For the most part, you're not gonna have somebody telling you, hey man, you guys sit next to your desk and stare at your computer until it's 5 o'clock in the evening, and then you can go home, kind of thing. So
yeah, it's very if you got stuff going on, just like how it was in EA, at least for me, if I had something going on with the kids, or if I had an event with the kids, baseball games or whatever, hey boss, I'm ditching out early. Okay. I mean, no extra questions asked or anything like that. And so that was pretty awesome. But I think the biggest thing is the mentality piece of, in my opinion, training and marketing shouldn't be at the squadron headquarters all that much. You're probably there. You want to be out and about negotiating, talking to different people as much as possible. And so you don't want headquarters to think that, hey, you should be in the office at all these times. No, if you're in the office, other than actually doing the computer piece aspect of it, in my opinion, you're probably not being very effective unless if you're just on the phone all the time. But that's my opinion. I think you should be out and doing stuff as much as possible.
Yeah, like I said, that's I think that's when you're talking about that, going from EA, because every EA office is different. It depends on if you're in a one-man office versus being in a hub, something like that. But or because I was in a pretty autonomous hub, when I was on EA, so we can pretty much as long as everything was getting done, come and go, as we needed or as we wanted. And so I can definitely see, even recruiters that are coming from EA, and especially recruiters that are coming from HP, to potentially, go from HP to, to like a squadron based job. That's one of the fears that they have is like, oh my God, I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose freedom in what I'm doing, or, I'm going to lose freedom of schedule, things like that. But, that's, like I said, that's good to know, that flexibility and that mindset is still there. It's just like, hey, I got this thing going on. It's not still, even though you're at the squadron, not as rigid as maybe it is in the regular Air Force, where they're just like, oh, you need a quarter slip and all that, or whatever, whatever the case is. So that's really, really awesome perspective, both from, from the training and marketing side. I don't see any more questions, and again, we don't want to run too far over, but I would like to thank Sergeant Nova, Sergeant Kraft. Thank you so much, for taking time out of your day. I think that was some super awesome perspective, both on the training and marketing. I think I don't have any other questions. I feel like y'all covered all the bases. And so anybody, again, who's coming up on their MOI can, if you were on this call, I feel like you could make a really, really good educated decision on, if training marketing is for you or if it's not. So again, thank you so much, for being on the call today, sharing your perspective, super valuable. So I just want to go ahead, close out. Tomorrow we have 2 days left, for these briefings. Tomorrow is going to be pretty interesting. We have spec warfare. I know, Sergeant Nova, you're in the thick of things right now, with spec warfare. So, but there again, it's a hot button issue, or, a hot topic with the A recruiters is do I want to put my neck out there and go for a consecutive production job, and especially almost essentially, an EA expectation, production based. So it's going to be really, really cool to get their perspective. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. That's for those guys tomorrow. But Sergeant Nova, I don't know if you'll be on the call tomorrow. But yeah, we will have Sergeant Hildreth, Sergeant Spencer, and Sergeant Rosa, it looks like, for spec warfare tomorrow. So, if you guys have time, and again, as I closed out, good turnout today, but definitely push it out to, to your flight mates, whoever it is, to have them jump on the call, because again, even if you're already in tier 2, this could be a potential opportunity for you